Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I hope everyone's having a good Tuesday afternoon. For those in Saskatchewan, I hope you've dried out after the downpours we've been having these last week. Today, we've got a pretty exciting webinar. We're joined by Blake Bunting from GoParity, which is a really cool um, service provider that helps organizations raise capital. I keep running into Blake on the conference circuit. And I think their app or their platform is a really cool service for cooperatives that are raising funds, but are smaller organizations. So we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to have him share with our network and provide some ideas for co-ops that are in that fundraising stage. Before we get started, I do want to start our meeting in a good way and acknowledge that Cooperatives First, our head office is located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is in Treaty 6 territory, home of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. We acknowledge that this land was not ceded, but that the purpose of the treaties was to ensure the land would be shared. Indigenous people have been cooperating in these territories for thousands of years, and it is through cooperation that all of our communities will continue to thrive. Because we're using an online meeting environment today, I recognize that we're joined by folks from all over Turtle Island and beyond. So I invite you to acknowledge the people of the place that you call home in your own way. I'm joined by Blake, and I'll turn it over to him shortly. I'll do a quick introduction. Blake is co-founder and director of business development at GoParity Canada, pioneering sustainable investing platform. He led the development of GoParity's business in Canada, securing over $1 million in funding to launch the platform and facilitating nearly $1 million in sustainable small business loans since its launch in 2023. Blake holds dual degrees in mechanical engineering and computer science from Western University, graduating with distinction. He's recognized as one of Canada's top 25 environmentalists under 25 by the Starfish Canada, and is an experienced speaker, notably the youngest keynote presenter at Energy Disruptors Unite in 2022. Blake is passionate about democratizing access to sustainable investing, particularly for young Canadians. He serves on the boards of the Starfish Canada and the Dream Chase Changemaker Foundation. His vision is a future where impact investing is the norm, with everyone having access to local, sustainable investment opportunities. An avid rock climber and mountaineer, Blake's personal commitment to environmental sustainability aligns with his professional goals, aligning his effort driving his efforts to make sustainable finance accessible to everyone. If folks have any questions during Blake's presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll make time at the end for a Q&A. Blake, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. I appreciate that. And I too am happy to see some familiar faces, or at least names in the chat, and some of our GoParity community seems to be here, which is awesome. I'm so excited to be here, first and foremost, because GoParity was actually born out of a cooperative. So I always feel very close to home when speaking to this like-minded community. I think is the first thing that I know when I'm speaking with cooperatives, because GoParity idea and kind of first iteration started in Europe, in Portugal, and our founder in Europe, he actually over a decade ago started the first renewable energy cooperative in Portugal. Reason being, he probably like many of us um, was thinking about how can we start building more renewable energy projects, or just support our community, even at a wider level. He said, "Hey, I have maybe $5,000, $10,000, and I bet a couple of my friends do." And slowly that built into a cooperative that's still running today. That said, one of the challenges that was faced was that really it was a long process from the regulatory side, the legal side, and it felt like a strain that isn't accessible to everyone. Um, the team who did that was really passionate, really engaged, and dove all the way in. So kind of coming out of that, he asked the question, well, is there an easier way? Is there something that we could get theoretically everyone engaged in supporting local projects through their own investments? And that's where GoParity came from. So now over a decade later, with GoParity Europe operating for about a decade, and now GoParity Canada operating for just over 2 years, our anniversary on the 21st. So really excited to chat with more cooperatives today because since the beginning it's been kind of value line at our core, and actually since the beginning of GoParity Canada as well. I'm gonna pop some slides up here. And we can dive in. Is everyone able to see this? Okay, awesome. So I like to dive right into the specifics of what we are, not leave anything out. So I mean, first and foremost, GoParity funds small to medium-sized Canadian organizations to help support their sustainability projects, whether that be socially aligned or environmentally aligned. When I say projects, that means financing between about 50K and $1 million. And we can usually kind of start to end the process in about a month to 4 months. So we aim for it to be a really quick, efficient way to raise capital, to raise financing. As I said, we have a global presence. So around the world, we have about 50,000 users that are reviewing projects and making investments as they see fit in specific projects that align with their values. Over the last many years, we've financed about $70 million towards over 400 projects around the world. And in Canada, just in the last 2 years, we funded about $1 million through 10 projects to date, and about 1,000 investors. So smaller here, but we're continuing to grow quite fast and working on more and more projects as we go. And so really, why does this matter? Well, for cooperatives, we can be really flexible. And I think that's the core piece that I found that we've had so much success working with cooperatives is traditional financiers. I think in the past are a struggle to work with cooperatives due to the legal structure, due to the membership framework, and it's often a barrier to entry, even if there's a really strong financial base to the organization. And that's something that we've never had an issue with, and can really be flexible with setting up terms that make sense to the organization. Again, we can be really fast, so we can whip up a proposal in a week, and then get the project posted on our platform, and funded pretty quickly. As I said, usually kind of 1 to 4 months is the timeline, start to finish. The other beautiful piece is that you're not raising money through the bank, through one entity. You're raising money through the community. So individuals and organizations can invest $20 or more for free, and it takes a few minutes for them to sign up. So it can be really accessible, especially for co-ops with a community of members already that are looking for new ways to support the cooperative, or new kind of investment opportunities, and for the wider community. Oftentimes we will work on a project that is local, place-based, and it's really interesting for the neighborhood or the area to be a support of the project in a really easy and tangible way. And finally, I mean, it's a straightforward process. Again, quote, that whole process is free. We're not going to charge any fees. There's nothing hidden, except for the straightforward proposal that lists out exactly how it works. And it's a loan. It's pretty straightforward, but we will walk through those steps, and exactly what any costs are. And then finally, I mean, our community are all impact aligned. So sure, many of our investors are looking for return, but they're also looking to make a difference, make an impact. So that leads to many things. It leads to a community of cheerleaders, supporters, but it also leads to often more affordable financing because folks are interested in engaging beyond just the return. So what types of projects do we support? So I mean, I mentioned how we are a sustainable investment platform, how we support sustainability. To us, that means making a positive impact on people and the planet. But we do have five kind of core areas that we invest in. At its core, we'll look at any project that we can map to a contribution to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but generally we're working in these five verticals. The blue water economy, business and transition, green land use, social economy, and sustainable energy. And I have a few examples here, and I'll go through a couple examples, but generally, most projects that have a positive impact on the planet or people can fit into one of these categories. Just to be straightforward and upfront, I mean, we've gone through the process of funding many times. We've looked at all the options out there, and something that really is close to our heart is being transparent. Both from an investor standpoint, we want to be transparent about where investors' money is going and the impacts that it has, but also from an organization that we're financing. We want to be very transparent in what we offer. So again, we offer loans from 50K to $1 million, 1 to 8 year terms with a fixed annual interest rate. The only fees we charge, aside from the interest rate that's going back to investors, is a 1% annual servicing fee and a one-time origination fee upon successfully raising the funds for the project. And then the types of financing we do: equipment financing, term financing, bridge loans, and working capital loans. So anything from that shorter term bridge or working capital types of financing all the way up to slightly longer term loans. Happy to go deeper into this, but I'll kind of skim over this for now and happy to share this after. But just to paint a really quick picture of how it works, how the process works for a co-op that might be interested in applying for funding, is once they've submitted an application, which is generally some financial information and overview of the funding need, within a week we can get back to them with a proposal. So we have a due diligence process to vet the project, to qualify it, to put it on our platform, ensuring that it meets the general risk tolerance and kind of objectives of our investment community. And within a week, we can get a proposal to finalize and kind of accept term sheet. Once we've done that, then the fun part begins. We get to build the campaign, the storytelling, and the sharing it with our wider community, both through the platform, but also through our different social media, as well as our channel partners that we work closely with. And then we tell the story, we get it out there, and we raise the money through this campaign. And finally, once the funding is raised, we close it, we close the project, release the funds, and everything is facilitated through the platform. So it's a really easy process for an organization who can simply be repaying through GoParity, and we facilitate it going back to all the tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of investors, depending on the size of the project. So here's a few examples of some recent projects, anything from supporting renewable energy to supporting sustainable building products, to supporting family-owned oyster farms all across the country. But I did want to tie us back to two examples of funding cooperatives because that's what we're all interested in today. So I have two examples from kind of almost either end of the country, not quite, but one in Vancouver and one in London, Ontario, to kind of paint the picture of what worked and why we worked together. So Brave Technology Co-op is an overdose prevention technology company. Something maybe they're most well known for are buttons that are put usually in spaces that are behind locked doors. So whether it be bathrooms or public areas or social housing, and it's a way to kind of sound an alarm if an overdose is occurring. And they have a technology platform behind that to alert the right people and ensure and aim to save lives. Brave's been around since I believe 2018, doing really well in building their co-op, and they were looking for some financing to bridge not only some grant funding they had for product development, but to support this product development that they were working on for their next hardware technology. Traditional banks, credit unions weren't really an option, due again to the cooperative structure. They often, I it was something that was voiced to them in every application they did, that it was difficult to go through the verification process of all of the members, and vetting that goes on with the traditional bank's due diligence process. So it was something that they couldn't look at, even though from a financial perspective, it was were they should have, in our opinion, been able to get financing, and they did through us. So what we did with them was launch a public campaign through the GoParity platform, meaning we launched a project to the full GoParity community, and allowed for folks that were aligned with this project and interested in engaging to invest. Within that, we collaborated on multiple marketing campaigns. We went in and did some interviews with the leaders of their team to share kind of the deeper story of why they were doing this work and why it matters so much, and got some really incredible stories that we were able to share through the project. We successfully raised some financing for them, and this was back in the summer, I believe, last year. The other example is one of our first projects in Canada. So it was really exciting to see the alignment with co-ops from kind of almost day one here. And this was with London District Renewable Energy Co-op. They've leveraged back in 2015, I think, the feed-in tariff program, and were able to install 8 different rooftop solar systems in the London community, and have been operating those, managing those since, earning strong returns year over year, with this really long, I think, 20 or 30-year power purchase agreement with the local utility. When they first started the cooperative, they had developed a model with a solar developer and then the cooperative. And through that model, it required that the developer provide a loan to the cooperative to get them on their feet. And the loan was pretty high interest. It was a private lender providing them a loan. So it was a long-term, relatively flexible, but with a really high interest rate. So we were able to come in and refinance a portion of that loan at a much lower interest rate. And again, traditional banks, credit unions were not an option due to the structure, this understanding. And what we did was, instead of launch this publicly through our community, because they wanted a term of 12 years, it's a bit outside of generally what we offer on the GoParity platform, which again is 1 to 8 years. But because of this, and because they were a cooperative that believed that they had a community of members that were going to be willing to support this, they actually launched this as a private campaign. So they were able to, via a private link, share this just with their member community, and raise the money locally. What ended up happening is they raised $150,000 through their own community, as well as some local community partners and impact investment organizations, and we facilitated the whole process. So that's to highlight kind of another example that works really well when maybe the terms, the kind of conventional terms that we're going to come up with to raise through our whole community are not perfectly in line with what the co-op wants. There's also we have an opportunity where we can facilitate all of the legal compliance, contract setup, and servicing of the loan. But the co-op can actually set their own terms if they're raising it privately and not through our kind of public community. And that's what we did with LDRC. So those are a couple of examples we do, but what I really want to do is open this up to some questions and get into the nitty gritty because I hope this provides a bit of an overview, but really want to hear takeaways, thoughts, and anything that comes to mind that you're interested in how this might be able to apply to your own cooperatives.
Awesome. That's a great overview, Blake. We yeah, really appreciate it. I don't know, I'll maybe ask the first question because I'm hosting. Just get the ball rolling. How does GoParity comply with securities regulations, and does this offer some protection for the companies you work with or investors?
Yeah, great question. So the easiest way to look at this is, I mean, one, yes, we are a regulated platform. We're a securities dealer, is what that's called, and private securities dealer. So we can raise money from investors and invest that into private organizations.
Mhm.
What makes, in terms of protection for borrowers, is we actually raise that money through one of our entities at GoParity, one of GoParity's entities. So when we're raising the money from the community, we're raising that through our own issuer. And then all that the co-op or the organization is seeing is a single loan agreement between GoParity and the co-op. So it's really easy on the contract side and whatnot, but it also means that the end organization does not have to worry about being an issuer under a prospectus exemption and kind of diving into the risks of raising money publicly in the Canadian landscape. So that's how we've made it really easy for an organization to raise money through the public. But we cover all of the kind of onboarding and KYC and investment related details for each individual that's using the platform.
Gotcha. Hey, excellent. Question from Rahil was I'm going to slightly tweak the question as well, just to add my own little bit. Do you take any collateral against the loan or require a personal guarantee or anything like that?
That's a great question. So we don't have any kind of hard bounds in what we do. It depends on each case by case process. And ultimately, yeah, generally we aim to have some sort of security if possible. So if we're doing, say, solar financing of equipment, we might take a pledge of equipment. If that's possible, anything kind of purchasing assets related, if we can be comfortable with what that asset is, we generally will aim to have a pledge equipment there. We also sometimes do personal guarantees.
Mhm.
It's never the lender or the borrower's favorite option. Neither of us want to be doing that, but we will propose it if it's the only way forward, and if that's a comfortable scenario for the borrower, then we're open to it. That said, we've never done it with a cooperative because it's kind of it, it could be an odd situation. Same goes for like we've never done it with a nonprofit that we funded because it's a bit of a different structure than say having one majority shareholder that is um, really controlling the organization, giving it personal guarantee versus one member or a few members. But that's so I would say generally we wouldn't in this conversation, but it could come up. And then, yeah, I mean, sometimes we also do unsecured, so it's not always secured, but that's only for business or organizations that are quite established and something that we're quite comfortable lending to.
Gotcha. Okay. This is all good information. Question from Dave in the chat. And if others do have questions they want to ask Blake, Feel free to fire them into the chat. I'll read them. Otherwise, here in a minute, I'll just open it up if you want to also raise your hand. Um, Question from Dave. Do funders or borrowers both need to be based in one of the 5 provinces where you're registered? And if so, any plans to move beyond those 5 provinces?
Great question. So, good catch. Seeing that yes, we are registered in 5 provinces. Again, as I said, there's an investor kind of focus side of GoParity platform, and then there's a borrower side. So in terms of regulation on the borrower side, we can lend anywhere in Canada. That's a really straightforward process. The regulators care about investor safety, and each province and territory has their own regulator on that side of things. So we're currently only registered in 5 areas, but we have something called a passportable license. So it's acknowledged nationally across the board. So really all it takes is about a month of adding a jurisdiction and paying a few fees to join a new jurisdiction. So we've been expanding as we see fit. And really just based off demand. So if there's demand, yes, we can come in. But if you're just looking to fund a project, say in a province we aren't in, we can do that already.
Very cool. Okay, let's go, Vicky. If you want to go ahead and unmute, ask away.
Sure. Hi, I'm Vicki Rempel. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And because we've got a shortage of housing for low-income seniors, because our province had sold a lot of it off under a previous political regime, I'm looking to see if we can't build more. And because we have a chance to build, can we build better? And that's why I'm so excited to hear that you are interested in environmentally friendly building methods, which is what I was looking towards. Do I have to secure the land first to get started?
Great question. So, I mean, when it comes down to the specifics of a project, it's really case by case. But generally, um, we are. You can think of us as bringing the funding once everything is mostly put together. So in terms of a housing project or something like that, we can sometimes come in on the, say, construction financing side. We're
Yeah.
not, I'll be transparent. We're not a great mortgage lender because our terms only go up to 8 years. So if CMHC is available, or more funders that are more focused on longer term land-based lending, that's definitely the first place to look. But there's usually little gaps, or maybe not so little gaps, in between, whether it's bridging from grant funding, whether it's construction financing to keep the working capital to pay contractors and get the project moving. That's usually where we can be a really great fit. The other piece of that is our funding is from about 50K to $1 million. So when you think of a housing project, that's usually pretty small in terms of the numbers, the amount of funding that's needed for these projects. So one, we love to be a co-funder in the mix, because I mean, even for a big project, if there's a little bit earmarked through GoParity, that means the community can be involved. And that's usually a really great opportunity. And then the other piece is, yeah, we can usually be flexible with kind of different types of financing that not all financiers want to get involved in. But if we can find comfort in the setup, we can do that. And what I'd say, Vicky, is let's chat more specifically about the project whenever you're ready.
Sure, love to. Thank you.
I have thrown into the chat a link to CMHC's Co-op Housing Development Program, which is designed for land acquisition and building. GoParity maybe would be a good fit for some of the soft costs or working capital costs. for a housing project, but that one might be a bit more in line with I think your project, Vicky. Another question in the chat from Rahil. What does your company do in terms of due diligence on the borrower and the proposed project?
Great question. So, as I said, our due diligence process starts by submitting an application, and largely it's two things. I mean, in simple terms, we need to see a little bit of history of where the borrower is at. So usually that's the last 2 years of financial statements of where they've been, and then we need to see a bit about where you're going. So that would usually look like projections and some sort of business plan. So that depends on the project, right? If it's really clean and simple and you're quite an established organization, might be as easy as some invoices and a really rough repayment plan. Or if it's a more kind of a bigger scale up or kind of new line of business, then we might need a more comprehensive business plan to look at that. But effectively, we'll gather those details. Then it takes us about a week to come back with a confirmation of one, are we comfortable with the project? And if we are, with what terms we can offer. And then, as I said again, we set the terms, and then that's what we post to raise through our community of investors. And that's based off the market in trying to provide a return to our investors that's in line with the market, but also based off what we know about our investors' interests and kind of risk tolerance generally.
Hey, question from Wendy in the chat. Our Co-op is a for-profit coffee shop that is a community hub, a lifeline for so many people. We are renters in a small, very old commercial building with 6 other businesses. The electrical is old and inadequate. The landlord is reluctant to completely rewire the whole building. We're toying with the idea of installing solar panels on our portion of the roof and using something like Bluetti to use the energy created. Would this be something we could look to GoParity for help with?
Awesome. I love it, Wendy. Yeah, let's chat. I would love to learn more.
Nice. Excellent. Kate, I've got another question then for Blake. Maybe just from the opposite perspective. If someone's interested in investing with GoParity and joining that community, what can an investor expect a return on their investment to look like, or how's that calculated?
Great question. So signing up with GoParity is super easy. You go to our website and you click create an account, and we ask you a few questions to create an investor profile around what your investment preferences are, what your experience investing is, all with the goal, again, as a securities dealer, we want to keep you safe and making investments that are aligned with your objectives. So that's what all of those questions go into, and then from there we have a system that will then match you with opportunities that you are aligned with, so within kind of risk tolerance and time horizon and all that good stuff. When you have created your account, your browsing project on the platform, you actually get to pick and choose exactly what you want to invest in. So you're not investing in a pool of different projects. You can actually click and choose and commit $20 to a specific co-op, like say London District Renewable Energy Co-op, or one of the other examples that we funded in the past that at one point was available on the platform where you could try it out, or you can invest in. Each project, because it is a loan, it has an interest rate, a term, and a repayment schedule. And that is where your return comes from. So if they're the 6% interest rate with a 5-year term, and you invest $200 into the $100,000 loan, let's say we reach the goal, we close the project, we release the funds. Over those next 5 years, you will be earning a return as the payment schedule suggests. So you can actually simulate that all on the platform right now. You can do that automatically and see what your expected return will be. And it will be that unless, of course, there's any events of late payments or defaults, which we aim to reduce through our risk assessment as much as possible. But these are investments into Canadian private businesses and cooperatives, and so they're not guaranteed in that sense. But so to understand what your return is, you can actually go simulate it on the platform right now. And I would honestly recommend everyone try it out. And beyond that, actually, we can Kyle and I can send out a follow-up email where I can give you a specific link to sign up that'll give you $50 to make your first investment on us. So you can try it out without using your own money and see what you think, and see what the process might be like as an investor, and see if that might make sense for your cooperative. Awesome.
Yeah, I dropped the simulation link into the chat if anyone's interested. And your guys' interest rates that you're charging per year are pretty competitive, I would say. Hey,
Totally. And so generally they're competitive across the board. We find that if we're looking at a project that maybe traditional funders won't touch, we're definitely going to be a better option than an other alternative lender out there. But also we find some of the more established businesses that do have a relationship with the bank that we're working with, we can also be competitive with like a line of credit from your banking partner. What we have found this really exciting fit with recently, not recently, but we've just seen it over the course of as we've scaled up here, is we are very competitive in the short term financing. Historically in Canada, traditional financiers charge a high interest rate for shorter term financing because it's a shorter term, so you make less money. Whereas our community of investors is generally really excited about short term investments because they get to see a project start to finish, say within a year. There's also kind of this higher liquidity, which is, I think, quite exciting to a lot of retail investors. So we can offer much better terms for most kind of shorter term bridge financing or working capital needs when compared to traditional sources. And as well, I mean, our general longer term financing also is usually very competitive.
yeah, I would agree, and that's what really attracted us to GoParity as a funder. Is I mean, you're going to be a third of the interest rate of a line of credit, and then lower than I would say BDC, for example, on commercial loans and things like that, which is really good for small businesses. Some questions from the chat. Have you or can you work with municipalities to help either, I guess, them raise money or help their, I guess, business arms raise funds? Is that something you guys are open to?
I'm interested. Let's try it out. We haven't funded a municipality before, but there's no strict rule against it. I think generally it can be hard for a municipality to take on a loan. There can be some red tape there, but I think there's an incredible opportunity, whether it is directly through a municipality, but for the municipality to be the ecosystem builder and supporter for putting these projects together, and then we can be that support for the community getting involved in the project. So whether it's directly working with the municipality to finance a project or working closely with them as a partner, that's something that we're really engaged with right now. And then on the others, similar to that, similar to a municipality, we're working really hard right now in setting up an offering that works well for financing First Nations communities, governments directly. And that's something that would be a case study that would resonate, I think, largely with municipalities being also government structured entities is something that is a work in progress right now. So if you have any ideas, please give me a shout.
Awesome. Question here as well, coming from our friends at Wascana Solar Co-op out of Regina. They're currently raising money through share offerings for several large-scale solar installations that they will own. It's a slow process to raise the necessary funds, so just wondering if there's an option to borrow money through GoParity to build the installation and then continue to raise money through shares. This way, we'd be earning money from the panels sooner and may then be able to pay back the loans with that revenue. We may need to change our bylaws and run it by the FCAA, which is Saskatchewan's securities regulator, for approval. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, that's something we're really interested in doing more of. Is given the long-term repayment of solar without, I mean, not all provinces have the best subsidies and tax credits. So it can make the repayment process just based off savings quite long. So in those cases, we have played around with this idea of providing the financing, say it's a 5-year or even 8-year loan, with the expectation that it would get refinanced or kind of paid back through the community. And it's something that I think the biggest barrier is it can be hard for us to be comfortable with issuing a loan that the repayment is not is still unknown, right? Because in the event that those shares aren't able to be sold, it can be a lot harder to well, it can be really hard to service the debt given that the debt won't be serviceable based off just the savings of the solar system. So it's an interesting one. It's something I'm really interested in figuring out better ways. So there's, for example, we've done some projects where we do provide 5-year financing for the install and setup, or even shorter term. But then once the project is complete, and this would be an example in affordable housing too, we can provide that short-term bridge financing through the slightly riskier period of getting the project done. And then once it's done, whether it's a mortgage lender that will come in or it's a longer term financer in the solar space or traditional debt, really, in the solar side of things is often available because the project is commissioned, it's online, it's making revenue. So there's different players that might make more sense for that. So depending on the scope of the process and how unknown the rest of the funding is come in, it's something we would be really interested in working together on.
Excellent. Hey, I'll put out one last call for questions for Blake. If you want to raise your hand, please do so. Otherwise, feel free to fire something off in the chat. I have posted a link to our newsletter sign-up page. If folks are interested in learning about more upcoming webinars, we do a whole series about raising money. Please feel free to check that out. It's our co-op startup newsletter. It's about quarterly newsletter that has lots of good stuff in there if you're starting a co-op or any other kind of business. Okay, any other questions for Blake this afternoon? Seeing none, I think we can probably call it there. I will forward the recording from today's webinar to everyone who's signed up. Feel free to share that within your network if there's somebody you work with who you think should have been here but didn't. And a big thank you to Blake for the important information and hopefully some good projects coming up. Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'll pass along my details to get conversation rolling if it makes sense. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming out and have a great rest of your day.